Okay, so let's take a look at DevTest lab in Azure. We will create one of its instance, VM, and also add one user for that. So let's click on create a resource and then we will take a look at DevTest. So type in DevTest, it should show you DevTest labs. Once you go there within marketplace, you can take a look at the portal where you can click on create for DevTest labs lab. Right, once you create that, you will have option to go to that particular lab, and here you will add subscription. Then you can add resource group. Let's name this lab as lab 101. Okay, so it's available and its location that picked is local. Public environment is set to check. Now we will go for auto shutdown. Here we can enable disable that. In next tab we have networking. The default will be set and you can see isolate lab resources set to no. Move to the tags part where you can see the tags for your resources, and you can then go for your preview and create. Right, it will go through validation obviously and then allow you to create. Click create so that DevTest lab will be created. It will go through deployment and may take a few minutes. So we have like deployment done here. We can go through the dashboard. Here you can see it will ask you to create a VM, otherwise we won't be able to see anything further. So we have to add the VM, and for that we can go through add, or alternatively we can go through all these resources, then we will create the lab. So here you can see claimable virtual machines, so it will be listed here. Another thing is you will also have your virtual machines listed here. So these two options. Then there are data disk, just in case if you are using images, right? Then personal data, right? So if you want to export anything on that part, you can request export. So what we can do, we will go to overview and then click on add. So here I'll be creating the VM to add to this particular lab, right? So here we have the option to add, but before that we will have to take a look at all the available images. Some of them are DevNami, some for Red Hat, SUSE Linux, then Windows as well. So you may find them scattered around like this. You can see SQL Server on Ubuntu, right? So pretty much all the options we have for images is here. So I will pick the one. Here you can pick the canonical one, right? Other than that, there are also CentOS based and Debian images as well. So you can go through all this list. As you can see, a lot of SQL Server and Windows images as well. So I will pick the canonicals Ubuntu, right? So 2004 we will select. So here we can take a look at the resources we require. So here I can use this option of SSH public key or password, right? So here, as you can see, I already got the username here. Then I can add the password. And once you pick the Ubuntu image, you can push it for deployment. Then it will start the deployment, and here you see your virtual machine is in motion for deployment. So other than adding the password, there wasn't much to do within that form. Once the deployment completes, it will show you that virtual machine is created. So we can go to the virtual machines that show up. So let's take a look at all the available resources. Right here, as you can see, my virtual machine shows up, status of running, and it has Ubuntu server, right? So I will just go there and let's see if we can explore. And here we already started here, right? So let's take a look at the options. Once we have everything set, we can add the user, right? So to add the user, you will have to use configuration policies. So let's take a look at the options for access. Currently I do have access there, and within that I can use add role assignment, and next would be role as DevTest labs user. So this is the role, right? And I can select that, and then I can click next. Then I will see this particular members tab where you can see the user to assign role to user, group or service principal, right? Then next would be selecting the member. Here you can pick the only member that you have, you'll add them and click review and assign. So once we assign that role, we can go to the lab, then copy the lab URL, and let's take a look at option that it will allow us to access. Meanwhile, we have to wait for the role to refresh. Right now, next thing, let's go over here and let's take a look at all the options that we have. Right, so now let's take a look at our lab 101, right? And it will show up the virtual machine. If we check the option, I can also restart, stop, unclaim and delete. Right now, within configuration and policies, we may notice we have like one member. Currently we have specific set of operations, right? And now what we will do is we will go back to our lab 101, click environment, and let's take a look at what we have here. So nothing to display, my virtual machine. Let's see, here we have that option, right? So click on that. Now let's take a look at the IP that we have, right? So if we copy this particular IP, should have at least some message related to our VM that should show up. Usually it just connects, but sometimes there are errors that we may face, right? So it's okay, that's fine. But let's take a look at our virtual machine, right? So we have our disk, then we have our option for artifact and custom image, and option to redeploy it, right? So pretty much we managed to set everything up. But let's take a look at what we have in all resources. Here we have our virtual machine, which should take it to this particular area, which is again understandable. But let's try and take a look at our variety of other options, right? Now let's take a look at claimable virtual machine. Currently it will only show up if everything is shut down or closed. We can see that here. There is a personal data option that you can export, like I mentioned before. Then there are secrets. So like your, let's say, password for VM would be here. Can add and delete new ones. Right now, once we go through all of this, we can also take a look at getting started page part. Here you can see we have set everything up, create virtual machines, right? And now here you can see this is where we managed to create the virtual machine, and then we can also use scenarios and the ARM based environment type of usage option. Now the thing is, once we have everything set, you can use that for your lab use, and once you do, you can later even close all these resources by going to resource group and shut down those options, right? So at that particular resource group point, you will be able to delete entire setup that we have just created. So here that resource group will be listed lab. You have all the options that you can disable, right? So we managed to do pretty much everything that we could on that part. So we created Azure DevTest labs. We also managed to set things, add user and add VM, and also managed to look around all these options.